dog. I never
No,
cared
no,
about the dog.
I'm saying this because it seems like in the past you have brought that up as like saying like people care about the dog. No, it's about the
No,
characterization
the
of.
reason I kept saying Scooby Doo, I was talking about the title of the show. In other words, Scooby Doo, as you were familiar with as a kid, was not advertised. That's why I kept saying Scooby Doo. It wasn't
Okay,
about the
that's
dog
fair.
specifically.
That's fair. But as I'm saying, no, the characterization, there is none. None of them match the characters. None of them. Absolutely none. With the possible exception of Norville being the nice guy, but even that, to an extent, it's not exactly the same. And even and throughout so many of the episodes, even when we started adding more of the elements that we would know of Mystery Incorporated, it felt hollow. It rang hollow. And some of it felt more like they were matching up with cliches more than they were actually trying to match up with the characters. So now, on it, that's as a Scooby IP. On its own, if you ignore the Scooby IP, I did actually enjoy and think it was all right. I would give it a 6 out of 10 on its own. But as a Scooby fan, for at least for the first 5, for the later 5, oh yeah, they threw in a lot of references, which I'm like, okay, but it still felt hollow to me.
So you were kind of at least mildly in the same boat I was. It took a little bit to grow on you.
Yes, but at the same time, like I said, as a fan, it just stuck with me throughout the whole thing, and I just felt like these aren't the characters. Throughout the entirety of it, it still did not feel like the characters at all.
Okay, fair enough. What about you, Raymond? What did you think? Did you have to binge watch it?
No, I watched the first 4 episodes when they were new, and then I followed it up after, I guess, last week when you and Joseph had that discussion. So I watched it all the way up to episode 8, and this morning I just watched the last 2 episodes.
So what did you think of the kind of first 3/4 of the series?
It was boring. It wasn't terrible. It was just boring. Some of the jokes were kind of lame. It was fine, I guess. It just wasn't like anything to write home about, but nor was it anything to rage out about either. I didn't.
Right.
It just seemed like when you look at all the people like being all schizo about it, or just raging or whatever word you want to call it, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
I will agree with that.
It's ridiculous. Anyways, after I would say like episode 5 is when it started getting better for me.
Mm-hmm.
By episode 7, I was probably hooked into the story itself.
Yeah.
By episode 8, I was intrigued by where it was going.
Yes.
Yeah. I was exactly the same with that.
And sorry, I woke up with a sore throat this morning.
Hey, me too.
Yeah, it's kind of cold in the morning, but yeah, it wasn't that bad. I guess with Robert, you know, him being a fan comes first. With me, I never attach myself that much to any IP.
Right.
That I can't watch a show. So I was able to enjoy it for what it was. And the characters are so far removed from the originals that when I was watching the show, I wasn't even watching Velma or Shaggy or Fred and Daphne. They just acted so completely different. The only thing that they had was the names and the clothes, and that's it.
Some of the traits, I would say.
Few and far between.
Very few, yes. But
they were so far removed that it wasn't them, and it was much easier to watch the show once you realize that they're not the same. And it's not a big deal. It was not a big deal.
It was very much so like, would you say satire?
It's not a satire of the show, of the original Scooby-Doo show itself. It's a satire of modern social and political climates.
Yeah.
It's just using the Scooby IP as a vehicle to tell that satire.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
One other point I forgot to mention, I would say this though, I have seen far worse mishandlings of an IP. I will say this, it's above Thundercats Roar as far as bastardization, and for the sake of comedy.
I have not seen that.
Oh,
isn't that like Teen Titans Go or no?
Yeah. In fact, that's
I love Teen Titans Go. It's adorable.
That's the one where they had the crossover Teen Titans Go, where they had the original Lion-O show up saying, "You guys are great, and anyone who says otherwise are just poop people with poop opinions."
Oh, I remember that. I do remember now that you mention it.
That was funny, but at the same time, you know. But the funny thing, the funny, most hilarious thing is, it was the Teen Titans Go writers who said that, not the Thundercats Roar writers.
But they're only talking to a select few people. Why? It's not all the fans. Not most people just don't give a shit about that.
Right.
Like I refuse to watch Thundercats Go just because it's not
Roar,
it's not Roar, whatever the hell you want to call it. It just doesn't look good to me, so I just refuse to watch it. I don't care that it makes fun of the fans. It's who gives a shit.
Right.
I don't know. Never seen it. I like Teen Titans Go though. It's adorable.
I've never watched it.
What?
It didn't look fun to me.
You're not missing anything.
Yeah, Comic Boom.
It's cute. It's very kiddish. Let's be real. It's a kid show, but it's adorable.
Yeah, I was saying Comic Boom. It's Revelations. It's still way above.
Way
Velma.
above. Oh, Kevin Smith's.
Yeah, Revelations.
Yeah, Revelations on the second half especially was so good. So yes, that was way above it. But
wait,
above this, but
above
poor Joe to go.
Oh yeah.
Poor Joe. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, poor Comic Boom, because he's asking about the mystery van in the Velma show. Oh boy, we have we got something to break down for you later.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not terrible, but it's.
Can I also say this? Can I say this? The fact that it took until the second to last episode for them to finally introduce traits on who the villain is, and I'm just like, okay, that's just poor writing right there. If you're really going to have a mystery,
no idea.
I know. Like, I realized that once we got to the second last episode and we saw the episode 9, I'm like, oh, that's her, and that's the one. That's the one who's doing it all. And I realized it all from there. But I'm like, you're doing this at the 11th hour. You should have set this up way sooner.
They kind of did.
The character didn't even have much dialogue until near the end.
They kind of did. I figured it out in episode 2 who it was.
Did you really?
Yes, I figured. I as soon as I saw the character, I'm like, that's the one.
Okay, if you're going by the look of the character, I'm talking as far as their personality and everything. We didn't.
No, by their personality, we got enough of that character's personality to like, yep, that's the one.
All right.
Now looking back, hindsight, I can see like her wanting to set up Fred in order to. And okay, we're just gonna say it. Spoilers. Earphones, headphones, earmuffs. Oh my god. The killer in this is
Fred's
mom.
Yeah.
But now looking back, it wasn't necessarily obvious to me because I don't pick up on social cues very well, but it was like her setting up Fred to want to be this like big man and how she treated him. Yeah, I can kind of see it in hindsight.
It was the moment when she started talking with Daphne that I realized she did it. Everything fell into place with that moment.
That's sensitive for me, but I was already suspecting her from episode 2. The reason being is because Fred's father, who was the obvious choice.
That's what I thought.
From a narrative perspective, it was too obvious.
That's the point. It's a red herring. From a narrative perspective, it's never the obvious one.
I was like, of course it's a white guy. I should have known that.
Especially when he's voiced by the only continuing actor from the original. Yeah, I think that would have been even for them, I think that would have been too mean-spirited if they went that far.
I just thought because he was white, he was going to be the main one. I was like, yeah.
Well, to be fair, the villain was white.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't a white guy. Come on now.
I actually did love, though, if I said in the final episode when Velma brought back the whole, yes, I'm tired of these white men. They brought that all back, but for a story reason, I'm like, okay, that's good. And again, as I keep saying, on its own, minus the Scooby property, this was a good show.
Not actually,
it was fine.
But it was good when divorced from the Scooby IP. When you have the Scooby IP, it does, and if you're a fan like I am, it does damage it.
It doesn't damage it to me. It makes me appreciate the originals more.
Oh, yeah.
I never liked the originals. They were too kiddish for me, so maybe that's why I liked this more. But Joseph, definitely. I gotta get your take. What did you think of these last 2 episodes?
I was hoping for something more upsetting to talk about today, but that's not what we got. We ended up getting because, like I said, the show's taken a lot of different turns since it first started, and now we're actually seeing it take after Scooby Doo the way people were demanding early on, and they didn't give it enough time. Obviously, it was only episodes 1 and 2, and this is why I kept saying it is an origin story. It's supposed to unfold. Let's imagine a young Bruce Wayne that isn't wearing a cape and fighting crime.
Oh, I would have been pissed if this was a Batman story.
But people would have been but imagine that though. People are upset because he's still a teenager not doing those things. He's not even developed yet because it's an origin story. You have to give it time to unfold. And that's why these characters were not familiar until, or at least familiar to those who were fans of the original show until about right now.
I'll be honest with you, man. They weren't even familiar at the end of the story.
Exactly.
They were still so far removed.
And I will say this, and I will also say this. This, off of what you're saying, it more be a case of if we were following an origin that led to the Batman from the Harley Quinn series or whatnot.
I'm not. I'm saying specifically by analogy.
I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm saying from my observation, that's more would it be the equivalent of watching what would lead to the Harley Quinn Batman, where it's definitely still far removed from Batman. This would never lead into anything even remotely close.
But that's not what I'm saying.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say what that was you're saying.
Okay.
I did not say that. I'm saying that I'm countering, but I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying that, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is that this would lead to a version that still would be far removed from the traditional Scooby, no matter what you do.
Well, you're comparing the show. I'm talking about the fans and how they responded to this because they were upset because the characters are incomplete. That's what an origin story is.
That's not what they're upset about. They're upset because unless they're going to go through such drastic character growth where they're going to completely change the character for 200% difference, this is going to be their characterizations going forward. And basically we're going to be told, we're going to have to deal with
this is clearly an Elseworld, Robert. Think about it.
Yeah.
You love Elseworld stuff. So
and I can
if you were
Elseworld, yes.
Okay. But every time you look at an Elseworld, even the one we went through today and recorded, Bruce Wayne was not complete.
It
was the beginning of a journey. And that's what those first couple episodes were. And
I agree.
And I do think that even me, the first couple episodes, I was like, God bless it. This is hard. It wasn't bad. It was boring.
I watched each one twice.
Oh, my God.
I don't know how you managed that. Well, the first 4 episodes, I don't know how you managed
because
that.
I could tell right away who this was going to upset. In fact, I think I watched the show like late Tuesday night. Or late Monday night or late Tuesday night. So I didn't even see the controversy. I didn't see any promotion. I just happened to be on HBO Max and I came across it. So I'm watching it and I'm seeing who the target of the jokes is, and I knew immediately this was not going to be well received, not record breaking. I didn't think it was going to go. I didn't think it would be something more poorly rated than any Dragon Ball movie. Like never in my life would I imagine that.
Yeah.
But I knew right away because of the target of who is the target of the jokes. I knew that was going to upset the internet, and lo and behold, and I was the only one laughing because none of that stuff applies to me. So it was no shock to me that the entirety of the internet is pissed at this show. It's especially at episodes 1 and 2, and then the way it changed. I thought it was actually going to make things worse, especially with the criticisms of feminism that were I'd say integral to episodes 3 through 6. And that's why I remember when I broke that news to Tristan, she hadn't even watched episodes 3 and 4. We did the first stream on a Thursday, and she didn't even know episodes 3 and 4 were there yet. So now that she was enticed, and now she has a completely different opinion of the show because now she understands, and also because she actually had some agreement with the criticisms highlighted from episodes 3 onward. So you see, and that was my point from the beginning, that the reason people are upset with the show chiefly is because they're the ones being laughed at. Now look what happened. Now Tristan just said she just was underwhelmed by episodes 1 and 2, but then look what happened when she found something that helped her connect with the show. So now she has a shared experience. Now this show is life changing to all of you, as far as I can tell. Especially Robert. This is better than religion, ain't it?
No.
Yeah. Oh, hail Velma. Hooray.
Eva.
Joe, I'm saying from what I've observed with fans, most of them was not because of the political stuff. A lot of it was seeing what was done with these characters and just seeing that no matter how, if this was an origin, yes, it would be an Elseworlds origin. But
and that's fine.
But that means that's still an Elseworld version of the characters they don't want. Even if it gets closer to the original thing, they're not going to be happy because it's like, this is not the characters. These are in-name only versions of the characters who, again, unless they're going to go through completely dramatic changes, they are not, they are.
Well, we've seen dramatic changes, though.
But then by the end, they're right back to hating each other.
Yeah, they were still not the originals by the end of the show.
Because they have to prolong the show. Remember, this is an origin explaining how the team came to be. There is going to be drama back and forward, just like this love triangle between Daphne, Velma, and Norville.
That remains.
And Freddy, it's all of them. It's all of them.
But see, now it's another thing. Yeah, they're all involved. I think the only ones that have not hit on each other are Norville and Freddy. So guess what's coming in season 2?
That would be. I wouldn't put it past them.
Actually, that would be kind of fun to watch. I would accept that full-heartedly.
By the way, just to sidestep the actual subject right now, did anybody watch the Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special? Because that is out right now.
Not yet.
No, I checked it out this morning. I thought it was going to be like a hour-long special. It's 12 episodes.
The Valentine's Day special?
Wait, what? No, it's
no.
Okay, let me go to my HBO Max. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah,
it's 47 minutes long.
No, I thought it was a whole thing.
No,
I went to seasons and it said 12 episodes.
Go click on the season. Go to season 3.
Yeah, you have to go all the way to the bottom.
Oh, I'm dumb.
No, I had to look for it too, because it'll show you the banner first thing when you go into HBO Max.
I thought it would be up in front.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I need to review it. I need to see it. Okay, I found it now.
Yeah, they make you look for the damn thing.
I thought it was a whole season, and I'm like, what the?
No, it's just a short movie, and it is very, very good. So just to sidestep this real quick, about those of you who haven't seen it, yes, you definitely need to watch it, regardless of your opinion of Velma. This was... I didn't think it was as funny as it could be, but it is a very fun movie still. I promise you'll like it.
Fuck a cat.
Yeah. The 4th floor of the stock exchange will never be the same.
Oh no.
Neither will Wayne Tower. If you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. That's just something everybody's got to figure out for themselves.
Oh my God. Comic Boom said Chillmonger said the right in the regard to a different set of shows, but it's applicable to Velma. This is an example of temporary representation. I shared that video yesterday. I'm actually having Chillmonger on tomorrow to talk about it. It is a example of temporary representation, but
that take 3 times.
I think people got to get it into their heads. This is a parody. This was not meant to honor Scooby-Doo, and this was my point in the first stream that we had a few weeks back.
I don't even think it was meant to do anything with Scooby-Doo. I think it was originally just something else, and then they tacked. Well, like as Robert said, I'm actually seeing it more as Robert said. Like they just tacked on the Scooby characters simply because that's.
But I think that's everybody's opinion if they don't like something. You could say the same. If you don't like the Harley Quinn show, you could say it was something completely different.
But I don't dislike it though.
Here's something else I was going to bring up. Scooby Apocalypse, very radical different handling of the characters, but there's still enough of the characters that you still say, yes, it's them. They go through very different characterizations. Some people criticize it, but for the overallness of it, it's a case where, the title alone says it. Scooby Apocalypse.
Yeah, it's not something you'd recognize, Joseph, but these characters are so wildly different.
That's the point, though, because it's a comedy. You're supposed to laugh. You're not supposed to appreciate.
But you're not supposed to. It's a satire of something else, not the show.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this would have worked if it was an XPs. They were XPs, as in, this clone is clearly the Velma, or this
and you could do that with any comedic take, though. Look at the Family Guy Star Wars special. Yep. Okay, let's start from the top.
But that's
Darth Vader.
you realize those specials that they were really Peter Griffin playing Han Solo, right? He wasn't really Han Solo.
Right.
Yeah,
that's exactly my point.
No, but this is not a. But no.
That's
okay,
a different...
Raymond, you take this one. You take this one.
Hold on, I gotta toggle my filters. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Okay, so as far as the Family Guy specials are concerned, it's not Peter Griffin acting like Han Solo. That's Peter Griffin going through what Han Solo went through as Peter Griffin.
Right, and
this isn't the same thing. This is Mindy. What's her name? Kaling. Mindy Kaling going through her own story, but not how Velma would have done it.
Exactly.
It's not a story that Velma would. It's not.
None of these are how the character look. Okay, here's what I think. If they were to do this, one, they would have had to be Daphne would have been the rich, snobbish one. Keep her white if you want.
She is canonically the richest one.
Yeah, she's canonically the richest one who has been a snob.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Does her, because I don't know, so I'm just curious. In the Scooby-Doo canon, if there's canon, I don't know.
I would call it the general.
There's so many different characteristics.
The general characteristics.
Okay, but does her money define her?
Some stories, but mostly no.
No, most of the time, it's just useful in certain aspects. Right. Most of the time, her character is defined that she's friends with the others and she is prone to getting in danger. She is
danger prone.
Actually, no, her looks were never part of the story in the original.
More for a gag. Right. They would do it for a gag or two in the later, like from What's New onward. But it was just that, a gag.
They never brought up that Shaggy looked like a stoner or Velma was a geek or Fred looked like it was never brought up. None of that was. Their characters, they had clearly
Freddy was obsessed with traps. There's a lot of comedy they could have done with that instead of making him this.
But see, guys, this is more to my point. You guys wanted a rebranding of Scooby-Doo that was not promised. The show is called Velma because it's about Velma.
Promised.
I
obviously see that. But if that's why you're dissatisfied, there's nothing to say except you want something. You want promises that weren't made.
But I'm not dissatisfied.
But what is the criticism?
The criticism is. Hold on. I have to stop for a second. You
go ahead.
You stop.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Everyone's like, go ahead.
I don't know.
No, you're claiming that I have
better than I do. You better than I do.
It just feels like we're having two different conversations here.
I think we are.
We are, yes. Okay.
And Raymond and I are talking as fans, and you're talking as I gotta say a non-fan who's enjoying the show, who doesn't see. Look, I don't want to phrase things. I don't want to phrase things poorly. I do not want to phrase things poorly.
Go for it.
You're fine, Robert. Just.
I'm just saying.
Be honest. You don't have to say something because you think it's gonna.
It feels like you are because you are liking the show. Honest merits, which I admit. Are good merits on the show without the IP. You are acting like that. Anyone who likes the IP should just accept it because it wasn't meant to be based on it. It's like, then why would they use the character? They used it just so they can get the names out there because they know you're able to make more money using Scooby. That is what this showed, as opposed to using XPs that people could recognize. Like they say, that's the Velma type, that's the Freddy type, that's that type, that's that type. They decided to put the characters in there. But then they decided to also overhaul the characters, so they were nothing. I looked on TV tropes. They call this a shallow parody, where there's almost nothing. This is a poor man's parody of it, where they just know
poor man's parody.
Yeah, where they know.
So Rob, am I gathering that you are taking issue with the fact that the original IP was imitated for comedic purposes?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe to a degree.
Yeah,
to a degree.
You are to a degree, Robert.
To a degree, yes. To a degree, yes.
You guys should then look at the dictionary definition of parody, because that's exactly what it means. And that's what the show was said to be, a parody. It was not going to be.
But you know what a shallow, but you're going by what the definition of a parody is, but there's different types of parodies.
Right, and this is most definitely a shallow parody. They took traits that...
Right.
But they also race changed everybody. They also changed a little bit of everything with every single person. I do think that as somebody that's not a fan of the IP, I'm not going to lie, guys. This was better than
Yes.
I don't like Scooby-Doo. I don't like Scooby-Doo. This was better than the Scooby-Doo thing.
We don't care that you do.
And we don't care either, but look, here's what it says here on TV Tropes. While it's meant to be a darker and edgier parody deconstruction of the Scooby franchise, many have accused it of being this. Even putting aside the absence of Scooby himself, the characterization of the gang has been viewed as the writer slapping common animated shock comedy archetypes onto the cast as opposed to being new takes on their usual personalities. For example, Fred is depicted as being a rich, womanizing asshole of a man-child who doesn't even know how to use a fork and knife. The characters rarely have ever been depicted as a wealthy member of the gang. That role usually goes to Daphne. Habits flirted with many girls outside of Daphne, even taking into account some distracted by the sexy moments, is generally regarded by fans as a nice guy overall, and his trap-making skills usually cement him as the most intelligent member of the group behind Velma in most incarnations. If a bit one-track mind.
If they were going to parody that, they would play off of that and make fun of those traits.
Exactly.
The problem being is that these characters are so far removed from their originals that they're not even parodying them at all.
Exactly.
That's the point. It's less of a parody show and more of a satire on social political comedy with
the vessel.
With the IPs, Velma, Fred, Shag, and Scoob tacked onto it. That's what it looks like.
But see, guys, this takes me back to what I was saying earlier. It seems like you guys are not content with the fact that the characters in an origin story are incomplete.
No, that's not it at all. Because, like I keep saying,
you would still see development towards them becoming the originals in some form or fashion. You're not seeing that at all. They still do. It's still surface level bullshit of just the four of them standing together and there's a van. That's it.
Yep, and they got the mystery machine. And they're solving mysteries.
There's no character traits.
By the end of it all, there's still going to be these same characterizations, bickering and everything. There's not going to be anything else besides. That's why I keep on saying this would fit if these were XPs, similar but not quite tight. You could accept that much more than putting the actual characters in there because it would have done so much more because no one would be expecting those prior characterizations.
A question for either one of you then. How complete should the characters have been in season 1 only?
Enough to be recognizable.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be complete. It just needs to be enough to be recognizable.
Yeah, like I said, you could have had Daphne be the rich snob. You could have had Freddie.
I don't think her money. You already said though her money doesn't define her.
I'm saying though, if you needed a rich character instead of it being Freddie, you could have had it being Daphne.
It's more accurate, at least, than Freddie being the rich snob.
That's what I'm saying. And
but because it's a comedic take, but just because guys understand, because it's a comedic take, it shouldn't have to be accurate.
But by that logic, Thundercats Roar should have been accepted by all the fans because it was a comedic take. That was way worse than this because
there's a difference in trying and then execution. And from what I'm gathering from you guys about that is the execution was done poorly. And of course, that's subjective too.
It's not that it was done poorly. It's that it was, I guess the proper way to say it would be lazily tacked on.
Yes.
That's not poor. And what is that between? Hey, wait, hold on. What's the difference between that and poorly? I think that's the definition of poorly.
It was.
One requires effort. The other one requires just not even caring.
This one was very nihilistic.
Yeah. And some of the moments that felt like they could have been, like when you had Daphne and Velma in the episode 2 or 3, whichever, the one where they started remembering how they were being friends, and she's saying, I'm the smart one, you're the dumb blonde that's distracting. Well, I kind of missed that. I'm like, part of me felt for a moment like, oh, wait, no, that's just the cliche character, that's one of the cliche type of writing, statements you would say between two friends in general, or who used to be friends very close and are reminiscing of the old days. That was a
it was not reminiscent of how the two characters would have actually interacted with each other. Not even slightly.
I wonder if there is more truth to the idea that this was the second season is actually the first half or the second half of the first season. And that's what we'll see more of a completion to their characters. Because I thought it was, at least for the end, it rounded it out enough to keep me interested, where we've got Daphne kind of going, and she wants to, what did she start doing? Like interning with her parents. Yeah, with her moms.
With Wait, is she interning with her moms now? I think
she was like fighting. Like she was like training.
It could just be self-defense.
But out in general, she was already learning how to fight and everything beforehand anyway.
Yeah, she was already tough as nails.
Yeah,
that's true. Which is accurate. Which is one of the few things that they did accurately.
Yeah, because ever since the first live-action movie, they've been having Daphne be a bit more of the ass kicker.
Yeah, they recognized that Daphne was always the damsel in distress, always the one having to be rescued in the original show, and they fixed her going forward.
Samuel just put it best. Samuel put it best. Perfect parody of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In Pup Name. Original, always look for a mystery. Later one, he was so caught up in the mystery, he just wanted to blame a character literally named Red Herring, and he just loved all these conspiracy theories because he wanted it.
Yeah, Fred was always the one looking for danger.
Yeah, that is a parody because you took even the James Gunn movie, it was closer to parody because and there was some stuff that made you infuriated.
You just like sexy Velma. Shut up.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? But no,
I mean, she did it really well. That was, and I mentioned this before, but they also in that kind of went on the whole like toxic masculinity thing in there, and they also parodied that in this. So I don't know. You know what, Joseph? You never answered me. To be fair here.
What was the question again?
What did you think of the last 2 episodes?
I want more. In short, I want more.
And I'm not arguing that.
Again,
on the show's own merits outside of the Scooby IP. We can all agree to that, right? Even you, Raymond, right? It's not a bad show on its own, separate, divorced from the Scooby IP. It's not bad.
It is super freaking easy to separate this from the Scooby IP.
Yes.
Very easy.
Very easy. Mm-hmm. That is the whole point we are trying to make
here's the point I'm trying to make. I'm just happy I'm laughing. You guys are basically saying these guys tried to make you laugh the wrong way. That's what separated you and me.
No, I'm laughing because of what it was trying to do. It satired social commentary. I was laughing at that.
And I laughed at that.
That was fun. I get what it was trying to do. It was funny.
It's the Scooby IP part that does more harm than good. That's what I'm saying. Again, they could have done it.
I disagree with that, Robert. Okay. It doesn't harm it in the least simply because it's non-existent, with the exception of their names and clothes.
More than that, these weren't complex characters to begin with. So the fact that they're deconstructed for comedic purposes,
they're not even deconstructed. They're not even remotely
deconstructed.
Close. Not even remotely close to the original. If they were deconstructed, they would be close. They're not even close.
Velma being an insufferable genius, which she's only like that way in 1 or 2 incarnations of the character. But otherwise, Velma's never been an insufferable genius to this degree.
They were all super tight-knit, close friends.
The only one I could think was decent was Norville. I could still see him as
Norville.
Norville was probably the closest to being the most accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Was probably definitely being the second most closest by comparison to the others.
I loved when they did little jokes like when Velma lost her glasses and she's like, "Oh, I hope this doesn't happen very often." Like
I did appreciate a lot of those. I did appreciate all the little nods that they did to the original shows. It was
the fog, the chase in the fog. That cracked me up.
It was the chase that Norville and Fred did in the trick room place. That
doesn't make sense.
That made me.
Have you considered trying weed?
No, Joseph. You stole my thunder. I wanted to bring that one up. That was my favorite part of the whole series because we've had a joke they set up in the very first episode about him not being drugs. He's clean. All these things, he accidentally sold stuff to Sonars. He didn't like it. And then in the last episode, he's like, I've got really bad anxiety or whatever it was. And he's like, I don't know if it's, my math test tomorrow or from me killing Fred's mom. And he's like, did you ever consider marijuana? Oh my God. That was the best joke because it had such a long payoff and it was so good.
But that
and what they teased at the end is they still have work to do in an origin story. The characters are not complete. It's only 10 episodes into season 1. They just actually decided they're going to be all friends As of episode 10. Remember, that was what Freddie said.
No, they hate each other at the very end.
They all admittedly hate each other. They're not friends.
It's going to go back and forward.
Together.
They're teenagers, right? They're teenagers in this weird, like, I don't know what I like. I don't know who I love. I don't know if I like boys or girls or what's going on with my body. And they're all kind of flabbergasted. Like, I did not expect to see Velma admit that she loved Norval. And I actually really like that.
That I did.
Were they together in the show? I think I remember seeing them together.
In Mystery Inc. And then, but as the creators have pointed out, it was always doomed to fail because she was a lesbian who didn't realize she was a lesbian until later on. That's
more than that, remember, she actually regretted saying that when the phone dropped. So that's going to add to drama in between them, and that's going to carry the next season.
Tavia's one is going to keep asking the same question.
I don't think it'll get a season 3.
I don't think so.
No.
I think the critical backlash. Let's be honest.
It'll get the next bit, and that's about it.
The second season is part of its initial order. That's all it is.
I think by the end of the second, we will get that kind of closure that you guys are sort of craving at the end, to where they're more of a well-rounded unit.
Actually, I'm not even craving it. I've already accepted the show for what it is. I'm not even interested in it being a part of the Scooby IP. I've already separated it so much that I can watch the show on its own and not give a shit about the Scooby stuff. I can still laugh and admire, oh, there's that thing from the show, or there's that over there.
Yes.
Hey, they're making fun of this little trope. That's kind of funny. I could get that. I really do.
And I agree with that. I agree with Raymond on that one.
I can enjoy the show. It's not about what was promised. I understand what the show was always about. I get that.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about that. What I'm trying to say is that the show, I don't believe the show was originally Velma. I believe it started out as something else, and then to make it more appealing to investors, they tacked on the Velma IP, and then they melded it and evolved it into what it is now to kind of incorporate certain aspects of the original show, such as all the little hints and nods.
Yeah, and if you notice, that happened mostly in the second half, which would be later in production compared to the first half.
Exactly, after rewrites would have happened.
At first, when we had just watched 2 episodes, Robert had said that, and I was like, I think that's a bit of a stretch.
I thought,
but now I can see it now. But I mean, I don't know that it would have gotten the eyes. Like, it's something that. It's something that is done so often. Like, Batman, I'm not Batman, I am this. It happens so often. Scooby is such a big selling IP. I don't think that a lot of people would have even noticed this show came out had it not had the Scooby IP attached.
Exactly.
That's true. That is very true.
And that's also something, and you're going to see more of the same. Think of any old property that hasn't been reused like this, and it's coming in the future because it's easier to promote. And promoting your product is the vast majority of the work. Nothing you did in the writing room matters if the people are not paying attention to what you're even trying to sell. So things like this are going to keep happening.
Yeah. That's
true.
So people want to know why Velma, why not something else, or why not its original work? Because it's easier to promote. Same thing with.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But my argument is, and I'm not going to speak for you, Raymond. You're going to tell me if you agree or disagree. My argument is that the investors, the people in charge of the show, should have known going into it how fans were going to react. How even people involved in the show were going to react.
They absolutely.
They most definitely did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, obviously.
They absolutely
we have even Gray Delisle tweeting out in favor of the articles that were trashing. Now, granted, she refused to trash any of the actors because they're fellow voice actors. She was never going to do that. But when you have one of the people who's been involved with the show for over a decade, that tells you there was something going on there.
Robert whom?
Gray Delisle, the voice of Daphne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she did it. Liked and retweeted a couple of tweets of people trashing the show. And
controversy sells, Robert.
Well, there's that too. I'm just saying, that tells you where it's, because that she was willing to be that outspoken about it. Usually she doesn't. That tells you how much that meant to her.
If we go by some of the posts that have been claimed by some of the bigger trades, they're saying that it was doing better than The Last of Us. And in
the ratings?
In the ratings, in the viewership.
If you look, doesn't that make sense?
I mean, but The Last of Us got I seen it on Oh, I think it was Oh My Diaz post. It was like 4.7 million views. It was a huge number. And if it's doing better than that, maybe we're wrong about that third season.
I'm kind of like,
but I expect a third season. But at this rate, if the controversy, if the fans don't react better, I would say by the end of season 2, I definitely don't see a season 4.
Yeah,
I don't even see a season 3. Honestly, I think if as soon as this next bit comes out and people have their way with it and they trash it to hell and back, after that, it's just going to be like yesterday's news. No one's going to give a shit anymore.
That is true. All right, so and now that we know what your kind of main issues were with the show.
I wouldn't even call it an issue with me, but yeah.
Right. I mean, like, what you thought about it in general. What did you guys think of the going into the satirical kind of social commentary of it all?
Oh, I loved it. The commentary, it grew on me.
Fun.
Yeah, the commentary that went on, I loved it and realized, it was taking the piss out of everything. Right down, and from the moment, what really sold me was the moment when all the hot girls were telling Velma, you're just as restrictive as other women are in everything.
I hate that blonde girl's nose. Does that bug anyone else?
Olive, I hate it.
Like a pig.
I laughed every time she got her butt implant taken out.
Yeah,
that was so fucking funny.
Through the mouth.
Through the mouth.
Yeah, like what?
It was perfect.
Now, as far as original characters, I didn't mind Gigi, actually, except there was that brief time I couldn't stand her when she was just being as bad to Norville. But overall, she wasn't a bad character.
Gigi
but I don't understand her.
Yeah.
I don't understand her because she was with Norville and then the next episode and you didn't see her for the rest of the season.
It is true. I was kind of confused by episode, 10 when she next appeared when Velma like confronted her in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, she's defending Norville here, but you're not together with Norville. You didn't even try to fucking keep your boyfriend. Are you guys even together?
Weird.
But I'm thinking about that, Tristan, because there was an instance either in episode 8 or 9 where it just showed Gigi walk off.
Yeah, but
that's it. So I think
go after her. We didn't see anything after that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna go ahead and write for the writer, so I don't know what happened, but clearly nothing came of it, and they're not together.
They gotta tease it in season 2.
I guess so. I mean,
it's something.
Yeah, Norville didn't clearly stay at the sword school, which he was in love with at first sight.
Yeah, that was like, but it tells you that his feelings for Velma were still that strong.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, for Velma to go right into you're doing that victory dance and say, I'm like, this tells you they're throwing out any character goes right out the window.
I was really hoping for some Velma growth because that was my main gripe in the beginning. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we won't get it,
right?
But my main gripe was besides how meta it was at the beginning, and then they did that VM voicemail bit at the end. I'm like, I hated that bit in the beginning, but now that you did it again, it paid off.
Yeah, it paid off. Yeah.
Yeah.
They grew on you. But I promise you that everything about the show is going to grow on you. And look where we are today.
I think here's what I think. I won't give it this. I think the reason why she regrets is because she's been proven right all along. And that's why she's regressing, because she's been validated, which now makes her full of herself.
Yeah, all of her character growth went right out the fucking window. She regressed right back to the beginning of the show, which is gonna, I guess that'll be something that they can utilize in the coming season. But it's
that's what annoyed me. That's what annoyed me. But again, I gave a decent explanation, but it still annoyed me.
Again, that's also why I say like by the end of the season, she's still unrecognizable as Velma, because she went right back to where she was. Even though all the character progression she had still didn't even resemble Velma at all.
She was very... What bugged me so much about her, and I know that's what type of character they were making her, but she was the most selfish person.
Yes.
Because remember, but that's... Yeah, but that's the thing. Comedic take. Remember, she's a parody of people who... She's more of a satirical take of smart people who think they're smarter than they really are, though.
But that's not who Velma is, though.
Yeah, that's not who she is.
So you can't satire a trait that wasn't there.
Yeah,
in a comedy, yes, you can. For comedic purposes, yes, you can, and that's exactly what the show did.
You do that with an original character. You wouldn't do that with an established character.
But they did it, and it worked. We know that because you laughed. You even said you got some good jokes out of the. You got some good laughs out of the commentary.
Because I didn't look at her as Velma.
After he was able to separate Velma from Velma.
Yeah, I looked at her as Selma. I looked at her as Selma instead of Velma. And after that, I'm like, but that was me laughing at this with the IP stripped off. That's what I'm keep trying to tell you, Joseph.
I know that point isn't lost on me. Well, here's what you're not understanding. I'm laughing for the same reasons. I'm not expecting purity. It's fine by me that Velma is not that recognizable.
Joseph, we know that. You're not understanding that we know that, though.
Yeah, we do know that. And
we understand why you're laughing. You're the one who's not catching up that we understand that.
No, but then again, you guys keep going back to something that just doesn't make sense in a comedy. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense when you're dissecting a comedy. It's because it's like I said, it seems to me you wanted more purity.
You can't. Okay. But the thing is, you can't fully separate it because the IP is still there, though.
Harley Quinn is a comedy. Yes or no?
Yes.
But it has more elements, even though they do some drastic changes. They don't. You can still recognize elements of the characters. You could still recognize elements of it that they took one aspect of it and they exaggerated it. Again,
Harley's batshit insane. Ivy is an environmentalist.
Bane has a weird voice.
Yeah.
Things like that. But that is still recognizable that you can still be like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Here with these characters, there's none of that. None of their traits are exaggerated because these were traits that never existed. They just did that. They just put in these archetypes and just slapped the Scooby name on it. And there's zero. And even the origin stuff does not add up because, again, they're not going to change that much where they'll become that recognizable to the character.
We don't know that yet, Robert. We'd have to wait for the next part to come out for us to see it.
That's fair.
But also understand that Harley Quinn was just kind of a goofy character anyway. She has a sense of she's homicidal in the sense of humor.
Joseph,
so humor is part of her.
Joseph, the Scooby IP is about a talking dog solving mysteries.
Right, which again,
it's goofy enough on its own.
And we're not trying to get team up.
And that's no. I'm here in this conversation. I was going to be here on Thursday anyway. This is fine. Anyway, and everything you said, like I said, that is fine, and that's also what I'm really trying to say here, guys. Everything that you think applies necessarily, and then there's what you think the rules of comedy are don't make sense because comedy has always been made by throwing rules away. Comedy has always evolved by throwing rules away.
But you do, again, if you're going to do a parody, a good parody, you put in the elements that still match the
parody
character.
Needs to, comedy may throw away some rules, but parody still have to follow. They don't throw the whole
book out.
Okay, so you both agree there's good parody and bad parody.
Yes, and this is more of a disaster movie parody. That's what I would compare it to. It's more like a disaster movie where there's nothing. Like they just watched the trailer, had no idea what the movie was about, and just that's extreme. But you get
that's fair.
You get why I'm using that analogy, right?
Yes, I do, and that's also what I'm saying is actually the joy of the show. Yeah, and also where you're saying good parody, bad parody. That shouldn't matter when the goal of the show is to make you laugh. That shouldn't matter. So how well thought out the parody actually is really doesn't matter. Okay, let me take it back to the Family Guy Star Wars special because I know that's something just about everybody in the audience is familiar with. Vader was not 18 inches tall, but you lauged.
But they don't.
3PO was
Vader,
not.
Though. He was Stewie playing in Vader's costume.
Right,
they don't bring up his height that much. They don't even bring up his height that much throughout it. They don't. Seriously, how many height jokes did they make throughout all that?
I think he was his own joke. Just the fact that he's Stewie and Darth Vader. But the helmet wasn't supposed to be. The helmet was not supposed to be bigger than the suit, but you laughed. 3PO was not sex crazed. It was just Quagmire in gold, but you laughed.
We're laughing at Quagmire in the role because we know it's not 3PO. That's the difference. In those cases, we know it's not 3PO. We know it's not Stu and not Vader. We know it's the Family Guy characters in those roles. If this was, they were
just like we know it's Mindy in the role of Velma.
Yeah, right. So if they were instead trying to actually say this is Luke, this is Han. If it was, but they sound if they said didn't put the Family Guy models. They had them look like the Star Wars characters, but were dubbed over and everything with the actors. That would have been more of an outrage. People would be pissed because it'd be like, okay, they're trying to play it straight, but they're doing a mockery instead. By putting the Family Guy characters in it, you were able to juxtapose the Family Guy characters onto it because you knew. Am I putting this right?
As opposed to Harley.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, as opposed to Harley, who you could see her doing all that stuff.
Yeah,
they're just exaggerating what Harley would do. That's the joke.
Yeah, so look, here's what they could have done. Okay, and I'm not going to bring up the rich part. I'm going to bring up something different. You know what they could have done is come up with a way of having be instead of Fred not doing good with girls, have it be instead that he's obsessed with traps. Take that from Mr. Inc., but turn it up to a sexual thing where he's obsessed with actually making traps. Or if you really wanted to push the envelope, have it be he's obsessed with the other type of traps.
Oh my God.
That would be funny.
That would
have been hilarious.
Who knows but who's to say it's not coming? Who's to say it's not coming?
We don't.
No, and that's also why I'm having fun right now. I'm in anticipation of more. And I think everything you just said is something that could definitely happen in a later season. It makes sense.
But here's the one thing, though. They're going to be going to season 2 with any criticism thrown their way from the first season. They'll go in and decide to.
You think they're going to play it straight? No way.
No. I didn't say that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that anything going forward, they'd be doing that just in part to a reaction if they're going to do that. Unless
maybe the later part, but I don't think the beginning. The beginning, it's already written.
True. Okay, that's fair.
There's going to be rewrites, of course, and they're going to integrate some jokes just to mock the naysayers more, and that's fine. I'll take that. I'll laugh.
Well, keep in mind, season 2 was approved very early on, so just a few weeks ago. So they could have easily been. They could everything you're talking about, the rewrites that you're anticipating, could already be underway.
Well, I'm not in response to the as much as I am. I accept that it's a possibility that they're going to do rewrites. I'm not saying that for one way or the other they're going to do that.
It's a possibility, but look, the reason why I'm judging it off of the first season was this was their initial writing. This was their initial handling of the characters. I am judging it based purely on that, not what could be coming, but from what we got in this season.
We are judging the show on its own merits, not on what
might come.
Not even what you say is to be what we were expecting. The thing is, when I watched the trailer, I knew exactly what I was getting from the get-go. I knew I wasn't getting Velma.
Right.
I wasn't expecting Velma.
Yeah.
I was expecting Mindy Kaling.
Kaling.
Sorry, I can't remember her fucking last name. Saved my life. I was expecting Mindy Kaling cosplaying Velma. That's what I was expecting. I knew I was getting that right from the get-go.
Exactly. That is the plan. Judging it on its own merits. And in my case, being a longtime fan, and everything. I mean, I don't know how long of a fan you are, Raymond.
Since I was 2.
All right. But yeah, as a longtime devoted fan who has seen so many of the movies and everything and seen the varying qualities of it. Now, of the shows, there have been good, there have been bad. I mean, come on, you've had
it's been all over the fucking
Get a Clue. Ugh.
They had Scrappy Doo and Flim Flam. Enough said.
Exactly.
Those are terrible characters that should never have existed.
The hell was Flim Flam?
I've never heard of that.
You don't want to know.
13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo. He was a little kid in the
remember, I didn't watch it.
All right.
I remember Scrappy.
He's a little Asian kid who followed not specifically, but he's supposed to be kind of like a parody.
Middle Eastern.
No, the little Asian kid that followed Indiana Jones.
Right. Oh,
really?
Short round.
Yeah, short round. That's basically what Flim Flam was supposed to be.
Oh my gosh.
But
bye, Dead Guy. Bye, Tavia.
Yeah, see you guys. But again, that's what our argument has been, Joseph. Not what we were expecting, not anything like that. It was off of what we got. And what we got, at least for me anyway, was not at all.
It was a little slightly
above. Guys, I'm not missing the point of your arguments. What I'm saying clearly, guys, you're putting so much weight on criticisms that really shouldn't be applied to a comedy. Because, like I said, the goal is.
Yes, it can. If it's a parody, you still.
Yeah, I'm not. This isn't a question of whether or not you have the choice. I'm just explaining why it's not making sense to me, because my understanding is the goal of the comedy is
does it
just to
not
make
make
you laugh.
sense to you, Joseph?
How is it?
Because you're expecting a comedy to have it gets to be more confided than it's really supposed to be. Because you're saying basically this parody didn't follow enough of the rules, but comedy's always been about breaking rules.
No, you don't throw the rule book out.
We're not saying that the comedy didn't break. We're not saying the comedy was supposed to follow the Scooby. The thing is, God damn it.
Well, Robert, what were you saying?
Words are hard, Raymond. I understand.
Yeah, I know. It sucks.
I know. What I'm saying is that a good parody, you can recognize what they're parodying, correct?
Okay.
No, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. A bad parody is
Sometimes.
the one where...
Are you telling me you can't recognize that there's a social commentary?
No. The social commentary I can recognize. Anything connected to Scooby beyond the name, and when they eventually added some of the shout-outs, the wink-winks, no, because this is nothing. And again, I'm saying they could have gotten more comedy if they actually had, they took stuff that was actually from the lore.
The poor application of the parody is that all they did to attach it to the IP was the names, the clothes, and all the little small shout-outs. That's it.
Exactly. That is all they did. Again, in which... That's why I compared it to the disaster movies. And I mean, like disaster movie and all those type of things.
It doesn't work as a parody of Scooby-Doo as much as it works as a satire of social commentary.
With the Scooby skin.
With the Scooby skin.
And I'm definitely not going to tell you this is... And I'm definitely not going to tell you this is like the most well-written comedy. I just said I knew why I was... I enjoyed it. I knew I was
going to... What do you mean it's not the most well-written comedy? I thought there was no rules to it.
No, I didn't say No, I'm saying that because you're also combining the mystery of Velma's missing mom at the same time.
But
so they're not
with anything. It didn't have to be specifically Velma.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
but they did because they promoted it.
I would say
the Velma IP was attached simply for marketing. That's it.
Yeah, for marketing, purely for marketing.
It wasn't there to parody. It was there for marketing.
It's like, what's that one? What's that one? Mike Tyson, that Mike Tyson cartoon. That you could definitely tell was a parody of Scooby. The whole thing was a parody of Scooby. You saw the archetypes and everything with that. That could have worked here, and I think you could have done well if you actually got something good in there to make it, as opposed to having to put the Scooby IP on. Because Mike Tyson, people like that Mike Tyson cartoon.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
There's a Mike Tyson mystery show. That was on.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that one. People like that, and you could tell it was a Scooby parody.
Yeah, it was basically in the Mike Tyson and like a bunch of other throwaway characters in the roles of Scooby-Doo.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, that showed you could do an original thing with throwbacks to the Mystery Inc. And you could have done this again if you had, in my opinion, if you had taken off the Scooby skin of it, and you put in something that you could still recognize as being like Scooby, I still think it could have been a bit more. I mean, it would have been just as effective. Would it have sold well? No. Unfortunately, I can acknowledge
the point is, if you were to take off the Velma IP, no Velma, no Daphne, no Fred or Shag, nothing would fucking change.
Right.
Exactly. Nothing would have changed. You could have, even the shout outs, you could still say, oh, they're making a gag about Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that would.
So you're saying the things like from the original IP where they solved mysteries as a team, example.
Yeah, because you realize how many knockoffs that Hanna-Barbera did after Scooby came out. Josie and the Jabberjaw, Josie and the Pussycats. So many of them started following that formula.
Josie and the Pussycats in space.
Yeah,
that's right. That's
a real thing.
Basically, Scooby created a formula that people can recognize as tying to Scooby. Again, that's why they did the Mike Tyson cartoon. Yeah. People recognize that as
after Hanna-Barbera struck gold with Scooby-Doo, they
milked it.
They repurposed that formula dozens, if not hundreds of times.
So, go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. No, I want to make sure I understand you.
Basically, in other words, people can recognize the Scooby formula, and the show could have worked. It had all the trappings of the Scooby formula.
It had the potential.
It had the potential of it. Once you actually put the Scooby skin on it, though, is where people then started to have the outrage because, unfortunately, these work fine as original characters. They don't work as the actual Scooby characters themselves.
Yeah, if it was just Mindy trying to solve a story, trying to solve a mystery about her mom's disappearance, we would have accepted that.
Yeah, heck, it could have been Mindy, like was Mike Tyson. You could have had to be Mindy as herself.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have been as marketable for controversy wise. They wouldn't have been able. The whole reason the Velma IP was attached was because of
everything would have
marketing and nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Exactly, and everything would have nailed it. But putting the Scooby thing in it, yes, it asked for the outrage, and in my opinion, a lot of the people. Not all of them. Those with the rose-tinted glasses, no. But many of the ones who were just outraged because they just didn't want to see their character. They didn't feel they did the character's justice and everything. Again, like Gray herself putting out her viewpoint on it, tells you that they had up every right to be upset about it. And it's not because it's not what they expected. It's because they didn't like what they were seeing being done to the characters. They have done this before. There have been other versions where they have done stuff to the characters and they didn't like it. Like with Mystery Inc. There are people I've seen who complained that they did not like how Fred was that trap obsessed.
I did like how they parodied War of the Gargantuas, though. That was cool.
Right. Or the James Gunn movie. A lot of people still have issues with that because, and the funny thing is, though, that was a restraint. He was going to go even worse with it.
Yeah, but James Gunn was really, really, really had his hands tied by the studio meddling.
Because originally they promised it, then they said, no, let's keep him more straight.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious what his original vision was.
Yeah, but was what we got still. Again, that had a lot of deconstruction. That wasn't actual deconstructing. Would you agree with that, Raymond?
Fuck yeah! I didn't recognize it because when I was a little kid when I first saw that movie, I hated it because it was so like. That was actually I would actually consider that to be mean spirited towards the characters. Yeah. I hated the.
Would you consider this mean spirited?
No, I consider this not even part of the franchise.
Exactly.
Okay. If you were to remove it and just as a Mindy Kaling show, would you think that this was a mean-spirited show?
No.
I think overall it does a good job, and that's one thing I've mentioned before that I like about like American Dad and Family Guy. They poke at everybody, right? Joseph likes The Simpsons, like the weirdo.
But there's some jokes where they've gone too far.
Well, I don't think that there was this kind of idea that they were racist. I think that's putting a lot of intentions where you don't know what the situation is. Like saying somebody's like, there was a really funny, I think it was in the last episode or maybe it was 9, where they diagnose Velma's mom.
That was 9. That was 9.
9. Okay. And
are one of you around a weed whacker or some shit?
Yeah, it's the fucking gardeners outside my window. They're loud as shit. I'm sorry.
No, as long as nothing's wrong. No, as long as nothing's wrong with my phone.
Just brought up the Scooby-Doo cameo in Jane Silent Bob Strikes Back. I love that. But again, that was still, you knew what they were spoofing, what they were making fun of.
I still
the
do,
thing is,
though.
if you're gonna be a parody, build off and go to the extreme with what you're parodying.
Yes, that's what the whole point is. That's why, again,
What do you mean by extreme?
Like what Harley did.
Yeah, like what Harley.
Harley took everything Harley was, but to the extreme.
Like here's an example.
Right.
One of the old, common knowledge gags was that they always say, Shaggy's a stoner, Velma's a lesbian, and the reason why Freddie and Daphne always partner up because they go up to have sex.
Yeah, just do that.
Those are the three things that are always.
They did play off of that, though. All of those.
No, they went in the opposite direction.
Wait. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, they did. Okay, wait. I wanted to finish my sentence here.
Sorry.
In that episode, Velma does the whole, well, you can't just pick up a clipboard now, just because you're a white guy kind of thing. I've seen a lot of people upset about making jokes about race, regardless of the race. Are those kind of the things? Was that like personally offensive to anyone?
No, it's just an edgy jokes for edgy's sake. It's just to be funny.
Agree. I agree.
Same.
And I think even if you put anybody in that role, whether saying something about a black guy, or it would have been the same thing. Yeah. It was just
Yeah, go to any comedy club and there's a black guy talking jokes about black people. Everyone's laughing.
Yes.
Same thing if you go to like a what's his name? What's that one Hispanic comedian? George something.
Oh, George Lopez.
George Lopez. Yeah, he talks shit about.
He's
Hispanic
hilarious.
Oh yeah, I love his stand up, or at least the one.
And I agree. I agree with that. Again, that all ties back to the show was separated from the Scooby stuff.
Yeah, because at least like with George Lopez making fun of other Hispanics, he's at least building off of what Hispanics do and just going to the extreme for laughs.
Yeah, exactly.
What Velma did was not even do what Velma did and take it to the extreme. They just turned Velma into something else entirely.
Right, and that was also easy to do because the original IP wasn't full of complex characters anyway.
No, it was
Harvey
easy to do because it was something else to begin with.
Exactly.
I think it would have looked the same. Either way, you could have started with the Scooby-Doo IP or started from scratch. It could have looked the same. It's not like the Scooby-Doo characters were deep. It's not like there was a deep lore in Scooby-Doo. Now look at Harley, by example. Harley was not only a developed character, but again, she lends herself to comedy very easily anyway because she has a weird sense of humor.
Right.
So in a parody, she has a more natural fit in this parody. For writers, that's a lot easier because there's a natural fit for the characters. For something like Velma, actually, that's very easy too. Or excuse me, taking from the Scooby-Doo IP and now giving us what we have now in Velma.
In what way?
Because the characters aren't deep. It's not like
they don't have to be deep, but they're recognizable though, Joseph.
I recognize
defined character traits.
You knew who the parodies were, but you knew who all the parodies were, though, right?
No.
You didn't get any references.
That they had the names and the clothes. That's it.
Yeah, the names and the clothes. That is it. That's why I kept on bringing up if you wanted to, if you need a rich character, people would have understood Daphne better than Fred because Fred.
Bringing up money like that defines her. I didn't even know she was rich. I've seen, I'm not a fan.
It's not something you would know because you're not a fan, Tristan.
Right.
I know, but I'm just saying I'm bringing up the money just as an example of if they needed a rich character, of all of them, Daphne is the one that has been tied to being rich in other versions. It's what I'm saying. Fred did not. As again, also the whole idea of any of the ones wanting to be sort of lady. Did they want to? They could have done with Shaggy because Shaggy's had other girls around him before.
He has had more action than any.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Scooby for a second.
No. Scooby has maybe had one or two girlfriends. Shaggy has had dozens.
Googie.
Okay. Then a challenge for you, Robert, because you admitted Daphne's money was not a defining feature of Daphne.
No. I agree with that. I was just simply saying if they needed a rich character, it would have made more sense to do Daphne than Fred.
But if it's not critical to any character, then it doesn't matter which character is rich, correct?
But it was critical to Fred in the Velma show, though.
In this show, yes.
And yes, that's what I'm saying, though. If you want it to be something, though, you should go more with what the lore had. And in Pup Name, her being rich was a huge part of her character because she always had her butler Jenkins show up like, oh, Jenkins, zip. Yes, Miss Blake, please do this. Yes,
yeah, it was played for laughs too.
It was played for laughs.
You could have gone in that direction easily.
Yeah, I mean, but they chose instead to give her two lesbian moms and and her parents were drug people and all that stuff. Again, stuff
which is fine if it was just someone else.
If it was someone else, that would be fine. Because that's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying: if you took the Scooby skin off, people would have saw the Fred role. Whatever, what the role that ended up being Freddy, people who were Scooby fans would have thought, oh, they're gender flipping Daphne and doing that. That's what they would have seen if you had stripped the Scooby skin and just did it on its own. Scooby fans would have said, oh, it's a gender flip Daphne because he's rich. That's what I'm saying they would have done with that.
I'm guessing the show would have been a little bit better received at least by the fans of the Scooby IP if they didn't go the route they did and if they made their own separate IP, but just did little hints and nods to the original IP, it would have been better received.
Again, if they did Selma instead of Velma and all that.
Selma. That sucks.
It was actually only at 6% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think they did do a parody on Venture Brothers of the Scooby Gang. I think one was Velma.
Yeah, they did a parody. People said they beloved that one because again, you knew what the characters were parodying. You knew it was. Again, that's what I'm saying. Parody, it's when you knew when a character what they're parodying.
Okay, let's try this, Tristan. Let's have Robert explain the original characters to us and see if we can compare that to Velma today.
Okay.
All right, go for it, Robert.
Okay.
Pick a character.
Okay. Velma. She's a nice, quirky character. Shy. She's smart, but she's not. Well, depending on the version, but for the most part, she is restrained with it. She's comfortable in her intelligence, but she is a polite person who works with Freddy times on the traps. She can be, and she could be also very shy when it comes around cute boys, and she's known for being a bit clumsy with losing her glasses. Daphne.
Let's start with Velma. Let's one at a time, just to make sure we're not losing.
So far, I've only spotted two similarities, but they're undone by the end of the show by now.
So I understand the intelligence. Like I said, this show Velma is a parody of smart people who are not as smart as they think they are, and she does have social reservations. She is more of a wallflower. She's not the outgoing type, so that makes sense. And you said especially around boys, and then look how she acted around Freddy.
But that was done for. I should point out that only was done with the crossover with Johnny Bravo.
He was not shy in the Velma show. I'm not sure what show you were watching, but she was not.
She wasn't shy, but
I just said she had reservations.
No, she didn't have reservations at all. She was very abrasive.
Yeah.
No, with the people she knew, but she largely kept to herself.
No, she did not.
No. That was because society shunned her because they were so fed up with her that she's like, okay, they don't want me. Fine, that's their problem.
No, remember, even in the first episode. Remember in the first episode when she was accused, her dad said that she was a weirdo.
Yeah, but that's yes, but again, we're seeing Velma after 2 years of having to put up with all this. Okay, hooded, really hooded.
No, I think what could help with that is if it is truly the second half of the first season, Velma needs to get humbled.
She needs humbled, to be. She was humbled in this season, but it was undone.
When was she humbled?
She was humbled when she was told that she was wrong.
Yeah,
she admitted that she was wrong. The show went out of its way to tell you that she was wrong.
Yeah.
You remember it was probably episode 2. Daphne said she was too judgmental. You don't have everybody figured out, and it showed that she was trying to make an effort to do better, and it just wasn't a good effort.
Yeah, just kind of went away.
It wasn't a good effort, but it made progress over time. But that was undone by episode 10.
Yeah, and that's good because that's something that can keep the show going. Because if you just give the characters. Well, here's the thing. If you just give the character everything familiar from the original IP, if you do that from the get-go, it doesn't feel like an origin story. Then it does feel like a rebranded Scooby-Doo under the name Velma. And again, we all established that's not what was advertised anyway. So what they were doing here now makes much more sense in an origin story, because now these are characters that are a work in progress, that have things to learn and have places to go.
Origin stories only work if they make progress.
But it's only season 1.
Can we move on to another character? I was going to talk about Freddy.
Hold on. I do think I see exactly what Joseph means about people that think they're smarter than they are, and she's very arrogant about that, because I kind of joked around the first time Joseph and I talked about that, and then I was like, holy fuck, this just might be about me. I'm very confident in my views, and I always I'm very, very confident, and I could be like, nope, you're just wrong. You're just fucking wrong. You're just fucking wrong. And I was like, I noticed more and more as I watched it. Yeah, that's absolutely what she is. And then I was like, oh.
But then the show is satiring you more than it's being a parody of Velma.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it still made me laugh.
But
parodies can be satires at the same time, though. There are a lot of different elements. There are words for comedy.
Yes, it can.
I can't even remember them all.
This was it didn't parody Velma. It satired smart people.
It did by definition parody. It imitated for comedic purposes. That is the definition of parody. Right. There actually is a little bit more to the characters, guys. And
what other parts of Velma were in this character?
Yeah, besides the looks and the brains.
Based on what Rob said, well, the look isn't even there. Yeah.
Besides the name and the clothes. Besides the name, the clothes, and the fact that she is intelligent.
Nothing.
What was that? Exactly.
Sorry, nothing.
Well, like you said, she's not coming off as the kind person you want, but like I said, an origin story, so she has room to grow into that.
And why wasn't she an actual wallflower in the show? That could have been played off of. Why is she a colossal bitch?
For some reason, they wrote Velma's mom back into the story. She's not just a mystery, so she could actually be a character going into season 2. In fact, do you know if that voice actor is someone with a name?
Hold on, let me look.
Okay, because if that's somebody with a name, then now she's an established character. She's going to have a role for a little while. So they basically, the first season was setting up all of their, as far as I can tell, from episode 1 to episode 10, the entire thing was setting up their relationship. And yeah, it's deep. Go ahead, Rob.
Sarayu Rao. She's not a big name, but she's just a TV regular.
Okay. All right. So that's nobody I know. But as far as I can tell, what I gathered at the end of it is that Velma's mom is, now that she's back in Velma's life. So that's probably going to be a guide going forward, since clearly Dad is not going to be in the house for a little while.
Well, then let's dissect that character then. What kind of character is she? Is she anything remotely similar to Velma? That can steer Velma? Yeah, the mother. Is the mother
she seems a lot more level-headed.
Yeah. So that is someone that can lend to Velma personality traits if long term you really want somebody. Yeah, long term.
Then okay, then I will. Yeah, that's a potential. That is a potential for what's to come. Will it come? Maybe, maybe not.
Can I bring up Freddy?
Yep, and go for it.
Freddy.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
Well, that's just what I'm saying, guys. When I keep bringing it back to the fact that it's an origin story, the characters are not going to be that familiar yet. You're asking for a lot.
But Joseph, you're going off of what may or may not be. We're talking about what's there, what we've been able to see,
right?
What's available.
But does it make sense in an origin story where people are becoming something more familiar?
Possibly, but the thing is, they had the chance to do it in this season, and they did it, and then threw it all away. So what's the possibility of them doing in the next season?
That's why I still keep going back to that rumor that the second season is actually just the second half of the first season, because it feels like they left off with so little character development that it only makes sense that it's the second half.
Well, again, they didn't leave off with little character development. They just undid everything that they did.
Okay, that's fair. Right. That's fair.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is going to happen because it prolongs the series. Just like villains don't die in comics, because it prolongs the series. Yeah. You can always bring people back and you can explore things. Yeah, you can explore things over and over. And you can revisit.
I get what your argument is, Joseph, but the thing is, we're not there yet. We don't know for certain that.
Right, and but that is my point. That actually is my point, because we're still in. Let's say it's chapter 1. We're still in chapter 1 of an origin story, so we still have a long way to go.
But my point is that
hold on, guys, I have to toggle my my audio filter. Give me 3 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Okay, go ahead now.
Okay. So Freddy, he's confident. He's kind. All the characters are kind. He's the second smartest on the team. Yes, he can.
Really? Yes, he is the second smartest on the team.
Because he's the one who comes up with he's the one who helps come up with the traps. It's only because of the James Gunn movie where they made.
He is courageous. He is brave. He is kind-hearted. He loves his friends.
Yep, he's loyal.
Very much
loyal.
So.
He's very loyal, and his only interest in any interest he has, aside from she's cute, is Daphne. If that.
Okay, wait.
Not all the
time. You just said in the James Gunn one they made him dumb. Were you upset about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I did not like that when I was a little
Everyone
kid.
was upset about how they made him an idiot who was stealing the credit from Velma. Everyone hated that. And the only time it felt like James Gunn, here's why I feel like James Gunn. I think he took those rumors, the common knowledge stuff, and pup name and exaggerate. Because pup name was the only other time where he was dumb, but he was a kid. You could actually understand that. He's an overzealous kid who is just more. He's not. Even that is not dumb. He's just overeager.
I always thought he was dumb, so that's my bad.
The original version of Fred is the quintessential paragon of the group.
Yes. Even in later ones, they made him a bit dim, but he's still smart enough to keep up and make traps still.
He's smart. He's always going to do the right thing and everything.
I think that fits with what we've seen so far, except for, he's...
Okay, explain that, Trish. Explain it.
Because he ended up being he ended up being the character, I guess, that had the most growth is... I don't know. Maybe
it's definitely Freddy.
No, he didn't have any character growth. He stayed basically the same dim-witted. He just switched from one extreme to another.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because even by the end,
that's not growth. That's not even regression. It's stagnant. Again, it's just going from one extreme to another. He's still on the same level of dumbass.
But then couldn't he go back? Well, that's the point. He's gonna be that guy. That's why writers like characters like this, because it's fluid, right? And it's a comedy. Sometimes we laugh at cowards.
But that was always Shaggy's role.
Norville just came back. We just thought he was going to go to a different school, and then he comes back.
That's not being a coward.
Norville is by far and away the bravest character in the show.
Yeah.
No, I'm not calling him a coward. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just responding to what Rob said. As far as Freddy,
no, the thing is, a lot of these characters are not. We're not saying that. We're saying that they are the complete opposite of who they are.
The complete opposite. Yes.
That's not really a parody, though.
It is.
How?
It definitely is, because you're imitating the character for comedic purposes.
You're not
so you take the character.
How do you imitate something that it's not?
Hold on. My audio filters are screwing up again. The goddamn echo cancellation thing. I have to toggle it back and forward. Forgive me. Hold on. 3 seconds.
Right.
Unacceptable.
I don't get it. How is it?
Okay.
How can it be parody?
Start the question again, because, like I said, I got a lot
of. All right. Let me, Robert.
Yep. I'm saying, go ahead.
How do you? A parody is something that you take something and then you build off and you make fun of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is going in the complete opposite direction, building off of and
subverting expectations?
That's it's more subverting expectations than it is parodying it.
Yeah.
Well, again, there are lots of elements to comedy. I can't explain them all. Like, if you've ever actually read the guiding philosophy to comedy, like people who try to streamline,
didn't have any rules.
No, comedy is about breaking rules.
Okay, but how can it have a guiding philosophy?
Okay.
It's about explain. Basically, it's more descriptive. It's not about requirement. It's about description, like satire, by example. You take the seriousness of a subject, and you continue the seriousness of the subject and attempt to highlight the point in a comedic way. Like you probably remember Daily Show, all throughout the years was probably the best example, because they were talking about serious subjects with squeezing in humor. So it's not about how the comedy in general has to be. It's just describing different ways comedy is expressed.
But again,
so that's what I'm saying.
But what we're trying to say is that all of your saying would have worked if it wasn't for the Scooby skin being put on it. That's what we're trying to say.
I do get that.
I parody of that if it wasn't Scooby Doo. That's the point.
Yeah, it would be parody of archetypes.
Think about, guys, give it a serious thought. How many projects can you really think of that absolutely cannot be deconstructed and given different?
We're not even saying Scooby can't be deconstructed, but this wasn't.
Scooby was deconstructed many fucking times.
Yeah, many times. Mystery Inc. was a complete deconstruction.
No, hold on. When I'm saying in this show, by example, so basically what you're saying is change the skins and you have the same thing. How many projects can you think of where you absolutely cannot change the skin and get the same thing?
Wait,
you see what I mean? So, in other words, if you change the skin,
give an example of what you're saying. Give an example of what you're saying that's not this show.
Well, this show actually, or not this show. So, take anything, give anything enough time, and you can seem like somebody. Okay, you can take Batman part by example.
Okay.
How many different characters are there that resemble Batman all throughout the years?
All of them, because Batman's always been and true to the character in all of them.
Well, let's try it like this. If somebody wrote a story, let's just take Batman's story by example. Never mind, you can change the skin, so he has no cape. He's not dressed like a bat. His arch nemesis.
What?
Hold on.
Be Batman.
But wait, hold on. That's the skin of Batman, though. Isn't the essence of the character that he was a kid that witnessed great? Yeah, he witnessed great injustice, and he was driven by that. And he in that drive, he wanted to. Go ahead, Raymond.
That's a motivation,
right? So now take that. And give it to someone else. Or hell, you can even make the very similar argument for Spider-Man, because it's very similar characters.
Spider-Man there's been many of the archetypes that follow Spider-Man. There have been many of the things that have followed those archetypes. But again, look, this is why again I kept bringing up the disaster movie comparison, because or here's another one, Last Jedi. What they did to Luke. Well, that was everything done to the character. I
love that movie. That was the last good. You're not missing it. Throughout the entirety of the trilogy, you're not missing it. Bottom line, the trilogy concludes with the guy trying to kill the girl for almost 9 hours of movie. Suddenly they kiss, and there was no reason for it to happen.
Joe,
that's how it ended.
You're just missing the point here.
No, I was just responding to her.
Okay. I said, with Luke, they had to completely undo everything. And we've seen other versions. The legends show properly how Luke could be handled. Here, there's no way, there's no absolutely zero way, the way Luke had been established, that Luke would have led to that path, aside from Rian Johnson wanting to subvert things and railroaded it.
Unless Luke is a parody of himself.
Unless he's a parody of himself, which Mark from my said, he treated it like that because he was so disgusted by what was done.
By the end of the original trilogy, Luke was a certain type of character. The only way he got to the point where he was by Last Jedi, was it Last Jedi?
Last Jedi, because
episode 8, correct?
Yeah, episode 8. Yeah, that's the one I'm trying to figure out. Like, no, the Rise of Skywalker.
We just saw him appear in Force Awakens.
Yeah,
we didn't see anything else.
I mean, whatever happened to him, the change was extreme.
Right. I mean, but you remember how they set that up, because Luke blamed himself.
No, but he would never gotten to the point that led to that in the first place. They made him so incompetent, so ignorant that that he just let everything go, and then he felt so distraught to the nth degree.
Yeah, Joseph, we're talking about the guy who defeated the Emperor. Well, sort of, in a roundabout way.
We tried to.
His courage is what led to his father turning to defeat the Emperor.
Exactly. But if anything else, if we had the Luke we got and what left the Last Jedi, he would have given up. He would have just given up the moment we found out Vader was his father.
Yeah.
He would have utterly given up. Be like, Vader's my father.
If Luke was that
means
he would have given up
too.
long before the original trilogy ended.
Yeah, he would have given up if he was anything like what the Last Jedi tried to claim Luke was.
Right, and understandably, it did take a very dark turn all of a sudden. I understand that. I haven't seen the movies I haven't seen all of them in a really long time. In fact, the episode 9 is the last movie I ever saw in theaters. Because just before that, there were all the lockdowns and nothing good came out anyway.
But here's the other thing is, Mark Hamill had to come up in his own mind, his own.
I know, I had to pay for that.
Mark had to come up in his own mind, his own story to justify everything. And in his mind, it was less Luke went into exile on his own and cut everything off, so much as Luke probably had a son who got killed during when Ben went nuts, and he and his wife had left together, and that she had just died before Rey showed up. That was in his mindset. That what led to Luke giving up. He had just had an immediate loss of someone he cared for, who was there for him the whole time he left, and that's why he gave up on caring. Which, if you ask me, makes way more sense than, I stopped caring decades ago, and I'm just this old stick in the mud.
All right, then,
Raymond, would you agree with that too? Wouldn't you say that makes more sense?
Yeah. as someone who's seen the way Luke, I grew up like with Scooby-Doo. I grew up watching Star Wars, and the change to Luke was so drastic.
Were you one of those that would have gotten in line for 3 days straight to see a movie?
Oh fuck no!
No, not even me. Not even me. I'm not that obsessed.
Yeah, I'm not even the guy who camped out in front of Walmart for Black Friday.
No,
those people are fucking retarded.
But again, that's the.
And that means we were never married because that's really how that works.
But it's that comparable to how they handled the Scooby characters. They are so far off, so far removed from anything we've known that the characters are capable of being. Even in an origin, we know how they could be. Even in an origin, this is so far removed that, like I said, you'd have to do something beyond drastic. Right. This would have to be a cold, like they'd have to remove their brains and put a new brain in there.
This is why
a really different character.
But okay, so are you saying that as a criticism that there's far removed?
Yes.
Okay. Then this is why
I'm not going to say that's a criticism. It's just something that allowed me to watch the show easier.
Oh yeah, right. It allowed me to watch the show easier when I again removed the Scooby skin and judged it on everything else.
It was super easy to do that though.
Then let me respond to what Rob is saying. This is again my point that because it's an origin story, the characters are incomplete. So they have to become these things.
Okay,
now
let me pose a question to you guys, especially Raymond and Robert. Okay. Are you the same person you were at 15, 16, 17 years old?
Oh no, I'm not even remotely close to that.
So do you expect these characters to have changed dramatically over time?
One problem though. You do know that in the show, in the original show, they were also in high school. So we don't have that many years to try and get them to the point where they are.
They were in high school?
Yes. Yeah. In the original show, they were in high school.
Yeah, they were.
So we do not have that much time to get them to that point.
Yes, the very first episode they mentioned Jackie is the swingingest gymnast in school.
Oh yeah, and but you also had the episode was the I think it was the ghost of Jekyll and of Hyde, the ghost of Hyde, where they were actually having a school dance at a barn because the other location
that was the Creeper episode.
Oh, that was the Creeper. Yeah, the Creeper episode. But yeah, in that one, it was a school dance.
Yes, they were.
So we do not have that much time. Wow. We would have to have such a drastic change within a few months, even or a year or two, for them to get there to the point where, again, you'd have to swap their brains out literally.
Yeah. For example, I was a Rush Limbaugh loving conservative in high school. No joke. No fucking joke. It took.
I was the same way, actually.
It took me,
especially Rush Limbaugh. Jesus.
Yeah, it took me 15 years to the point when I was 30 years old to start, going the opposite direction.
Oh, it took me less than that.
I feel like there's a flyer of you at the post office that says "wanted."
I'm not allowed there anymore.
But that's the point. If Scooby had started and they were grown adults, you would have more of a point there, Tris. I would agree to that.
I had no idea this was their kids solving mysteries. That's more unrealistic than anything.
Why do you think they were called meddling kids?
Now you understand. Now you understand why I said these characters weren't deep to begin with. Like it really isn't. It was just kids who
they didn't need to be deep.
Implicitly were getting high in the van and solving and going ghost hunting. I said implicitly.
That was the false rumor. That was the false rumors. People just
oh my god, they're called Scooby Stacks. They're definitely
they're dog food. Yeah. It's dog food. It's dog food.
Scooby Stacks are dog food.
No, but even without that, though, the guys that are the one guy, actually, who's supposed to be the stoner, hence people are upset with the fact that Norville doesn't even call himself Shaggy or do drugs. What did he do? He goes everywhere stealing food. And I do believe he says that he has the munchies in the original show, correct?
Oh, yeah, he's always been a big eater, but he's nowhere near a big eater here.
Yeah, Norville's
discovered marijuana.
Yeah, he just got here.
Norville's podcast about food is the only thing linking him to the original.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that he has a love of food.
So far. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
He wasn't like a school journalist. He wasn't like the straight do-good. He was always a good person, but
Raymond, could you agree with me on this? The only character who's been inconsistent in different versions is Daphne. By comparison to all of them, she's the one who sometimes gets radical changes in some versions.
She was, I wouldn't say like a radical change.
Okay,
I would say it's a character. I would say that there was a character progression within James Gunn's movie, and that was taken from there, and established as a thing where she is someone who is able to take care of herself.
Well, no, that part I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, for example, in the original show, she was a she was just I wouldn't even say popular girl. She was just a girl, a high school girl.
Yeah,
and then as it went on, she then started actually doing in the TV news, like by the Scooby and Scrappy, and then by Zombie Island. And then they went back to her being the girl.
She was never. That's right. She was never established as popular, was she?
No, she was never.
None
that was an assumption. That was an assumption. Heck, Fred was never a jock either. People always think he's the jock. No,
I thought he was a jock.
I always call him a jock just because he has a big upper body.
Well, yeah, because his build you would think he is, but for the most part, he was never portrayed as a jock.
Yeah, he just drove the van.
Yeah, he just drove the van and came up with the tramps.
And also told he was the leader of the group who told them, like, well, gang,
let's split up, gang.
Yeah, he's the leader of the group. That's all he is. He's the do-good paragon leader of the group.
And Velma was the sweet, but yeah, was now as far as like Shaggy, again, closest he's been to the character with some of the changes, but and all that. But with Daphne, okay, Raymond, you describe how Daphne is in the original show, and then they can compare her to this.
Okay. Daphne is the person she's just there to look pretty, but she's not popular. She's never been established as popular. She loves her friends just like all the other characters. That's the one trait that they all share amongst each other, is that they love each other. It's in more of a platonic way. They're all best friends. Yeah. There's no like actual relationship was made until like between her and Fred until like the 90s, I think.
No, until the Zombie Island. No, Witches Goes. Witches Goes was the first time they ever really truly teased about a relationship between them, when Velma asked, why is it always you and Daphne?
Yeah, so there's that. But she's always the one who gets caught. She's basically what Lois was back in the Golden Age. She's the damsel in distress, which is why they had the Danger Prone Daphne. That was the nickname they had for her, and I think that's like partway through the first season.
Yeah, Danger Prone Daphne's done it again.
Well, they kind of hinted that when she wanted to go into the mines, and she's like, my middle name's is Danger.
Okay, that I found.
The Ginger Jackhammer.
And when she actually called herself Danger Prone Daphne, I actually did get a smirk there. I'm like,
no, her parents called her Danger Prone Daphne.
Oh, yeah.
Her dad called her. Yeah. That was the only, that's probably like the only thing that, but no, she's not the type, but she's not the type of person who would have gone into to a mine by herself, though. She's not that brave. She only would have done that if she was with Fred and Velma and Shaggy and Scooby.
Or she at least knew they had her back.
Yeah, she would never. None of these kids, with the exception of maybe Fred or Velma, would have gone to the mine by themselves.
Right, so this version of Daphne is braver than the original.
Yes, she's braver.
Yeah, she is braver than she is, which means she's going to have to regress to try and get to where she would be.
Believe it or not.
Right, and I think that's really good, though, because that gives this version more depth than the original. More than my point when I said the originals weren't like in-depth characters anyway. They weren't.
These aren't in-depth either, though.
Right. Well, this just started. So from what I gathered so far, these characters actually have more depth. Velma has more depth than the original Scooby-Doo.
I would not go there.
Based on what you're telling me.
But the depth that they give them was so far removed from the original that they can't even be considered the same.
Yeah, and
similar.
And that's what I'm saying.
But it's Elseworld.
Yeah, right.
And we can accept that. That's what I'm saying. That's why I made the comparison, saying this would be like if we got the origin of Batman that would eventually become the Batman in Harley Quinn. That is what I'm saying. It is never going to be a case where they're going to become anything remotely. Okay, I wouldn't say remotely. I won't say that. But they're not.
As Joseph says, there's still time for them to get to that point. But the thing is, what we have so far, which is the only thing we can objectively look at right now, there's nothing there. They're their own separate characters. They have their, as Joseph says, they have their own depth. There's more depth to these characters than the originals, but they are so freaking different that they're not even close to being the original. They're their own characters.
They're their own characters.
That's fair.
I see what he means, but no, I really don't agree, because when I look at the base, first off, very simple characters in the original IP, and all those are there. They're just the basics of these existing characters now.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Right there,
maybe one or two.
I have one question. Wait, I have a question for Joseph.
What's
Joseph,
up?
tell me this then. How would you think this, and they could get them? In your opinion,
Wait, say that one more time, Rob.
How can they get from where episode 10 ended? What could you see happening that could get them to that point? If you're so sure they're going to get there, tell me, how do you think they would get us to something that would match the actual show?
I didn't even say I'm sure they're going to get there. I'm just saying this is an origin story, so we have to give it time to know for sure.
Yeah, but if they don't,
if they didn't, and provided the show was not canceled, you mean they actually conclude?
Yeah,
on their own terms.
Yeah, and it ends up being still very different and only very loosely similar. Like, they end up going out and doing mysteries, but they're still hating each other.
No, that's easy. All you have to do is humble Velma in a big way. Introduce marijuana and get Shaggy to chill out. That's easy.
Yeah,
with Fred.
You have a lot of work to do with Fred. You'd have a lot of work.
He read the feminine mystique. He's got to go through and read some books and gain a little bit of agency.
Yeah, he did become more mild since then.
No, he has to mature. He is still
a man baby. He's a man child.
Yeah, emotionally, he is like 3 years old. He has to mature.
That's what has to happen.
Yeah, he's a strong 3.5, but he has to mature. That's what That's what has to happen.
The one moment that felt like Freddy was when he actually, after he broke out of the restraints and everything, then chased his mom. That I felt like, hey, you go.
That's something I would have done.
Yeah, but then
But now that she's gone, that may be what he needs, his stint to mature.
I don't think so. I think he's going to regress because the way he's been acting. Like, you killed my mom. It's like...
No, I doubt that. They played that off for laughs at the end.
True.
Well, for Freddy, I don't know, but like Velma has her mom. Norville now has his dad, like I think they meant to suggest that he can write the prescription. So that much out there. And again, weed wasn't mentioned in the original series. That was just an implication that we know with our adult brains.
Right.
But if that's essential to the character, okay, you can get the vast
majority of the character, though. It's not.
Well, at least that's all that's fine. Those are all individual traits that would make them more recognizable as individuals. But we still need the driving force that brings them all together.
And well, Velma already established that she's solving mysteries. Now she hasn't convinced everybody else. She has yet to convince everybody else to form a team to solve mysteries. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. You would see that in season 2 at the soonest.
One would hope so.
Where they come together as a team.
Remember, they just got the van. they just got the what was the word they used? The
mystery
van or something.
No, they said like pedo. No, like they use a conjoined word, pedo something. Like pedo hinted, not pedo hinted, like pedo something. But bottom line, they made the obvious joke.
Where did Fred come up with the idea that he's going to be doing the ghost hunting? Where did that come from?
Kind of came out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, that came right the hell out.
Well, I think he enjoyed the idea of solving this mystery, even though it ended up being his mom.
Yeah, and wasn't that just all in the montage at the end? Yeah. So I think that's not supposed to be very. It's not supposed to have a direct. Sorry, it's not supposed to be directly explained anyway. It's just skipping ahead at that point.
The more I do think about it, the more that a second season could get them there. It very well could.
All right, now here's what I'm getting at, guys. It seems to me like everything you're asking for, or not asking for, but everything you're talking about could be achieved by season 3 of the next episode. Would you agree? Of the next season. Excuse me, episode 3 of the next season. So would you agree you could get all of that?
I would
if they really tried.
Episode 4 maybe is probably a bit more doable. You'd have to dedicate an entire episode to each one of those characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's the one problem.
All right, so then let's say that happens. By season 3, is this still an origin story?
Is it still an origin story?
Yeah.
No, it's an adventure story.
We still have
detective story.
It's a detective story because we still need to add Scooby to the mix,
which we're never going to do.
Yeah, didn't you say something about that, Rob? That they said Scooby specifically, that character just will not appear.
Oh yeah, and the creator, Warner Brothers refused it, and even the creator said we couldn't come up with a way to make it fit the sense of humor, meaning make him adult.
Yeah. And that's okay. I don't think it actually
which is weird because Venture Brothers accomplished that.
Wait, you know what I think they'll do is? You know what I have a weird feeling they'll do is? They're going to make him an hallucination.
That would actually work. And Robert's got some good ideas about traps and hallucinations.
They did a really funny thing in Venture Brothers where they had the Shaggy character be like the son of Sam, if you guys know that little story.
Oh.
The son of Sam was a guy who hallucinated that I guess like a dog was talking to him and told him to kill people, and he did. This is a real story, by the way.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So they
the killer, the 44 killer. It was in the 60s.
Yeah, the son of Sam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a movie about it, which was
Dave Berkowitz.
Yeah, so the son of Sam was basically they mashed Shaggy and Scooby in with the son of Sam, where in Venture Brothers, the Shaggy character was on so much drugs that that he could hear the dog talking to him. No one else could hear it but him.
Yeah. And it was really funny. You have to see that one scene in the movie just because the way they showed the dog talking. I saw that movie in theaters with my dad. Everybody in the theater broke out in laughter, which there was no humor anywhere in the movie. But then when that dog started talking, because he moves his lips, he moves his whole mouth, and it shapes along with the words in in a physically impossible way.
That's the only way I can see them doing this.
Right, yeah. And
that Shaggy is so high now from all the marijuana is that he is now imagining a talking dog. That's it.
Who's not even there, period. You don't even have to bring a real dog in.
Maybe it's coming. But
and I don't even think it needs it. I think it works well as a kind of social commentary. And like, honestly, the one thing I want to ask each of you before we end up wrapping up here in a few minutes is, do you think it deserved the outrage? Because I've seen
No, definitely not.
I've seen her called a TERF. I've seen her called racist, like anti-white racist. I've seen her called
no. Mindy didn't deserve, as far as I can tell, Mindy didn't deserve any of the backlash because
agree.
She's she's credited as an executive producer and of course the voice of Velma.
Right.
I know. I understand that the producers are in the writing room sometimes, so. I know she's expected to have had some influence over the quality of the show, but at the same time, she's the one
who pitched it. I'm not sure if she's the one who wrote it.
No, yeah, she pitched it. She was the one who pitched it.
The idea came from her.
But then where does Charlie Grandy come in? He's
hired him as a writer.
Showrunner, because I know and most actors are not good at being showrunners. You need an actual showrunner behind it. So
he was credited as a creator, though.
Yes, because he's the one who developed it for the TV.
Oh, okay.
He took the pitch that Mindy gave.
So he built, in other words, he built off the pitch, so that's why he gets the credit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, either way, it still doesn't seem to me like Mindy would have been responsible for the vast majority of what was said.
No, I agree. She did not deserve it. And I've been saying that even back before I watched the whole show. She did not deserve what she got. Now, if anything, it was more the arguments between those who clearly did not care about Scooby, who were saying, "Oh, this is a great show," or that one idiot guy who had said, "Let's face it, all of you all bitching about Velma, you weren't fans of Scooby until 2 weeks ago, so shut up. You don't deserve an opinion." And everyone was saying, "Wow," and it got ratioed. That was one of the most.
Wait, who said that?
Oh, there was this one Twitter guy who got ratioed beyond the hell for that comment. He got ratio isn't even the right word. I would use
because everyone on either side of that stupid ass argument was dumb.
Because the show offends everybody. First off, I'll openly admit I wasn't a huge fan of Scooby-Doo. I never saw a whole lot of interest in it. I always saw it. I don't know. You see, here the bitch comes out in me again. I always saw it as rather juvenile.
Hey, that's fine. Right? Hey, that's fair.
That's fair. Fine to do that. I don't. I fans agree. Don't care that you. Well,
I
people
agree.
Who love the IP don't care that people don't.
They're used to it. They are used to it. What they couldn't stand was people saying Velma was it's proper Scooby, things like that, stuff that they know is false.
I hear anybody say that.
Oh, there were people on Twitter saying that crap who were saying
Twitter's
this
a
is what.
joke, though.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying that's where a lot of the outrage build off of. And it wasn't
I've seen a lot on, like, honestly, almost every single day in my recommendations I get, Velma did this, Mindy did that, this is a complete disaster. This strikes again.
I never get any of that stuff.
Oh my God. It's my own fault because we've been covering it every week. I've kept up with, like, you know, the scores and what's being said and what's going on. So it is my own fault. But it is a normal topic. Like, there's a lot of people still covering this, saying, you know, it, like I joked around last week, but me and Joseph were literally called evil people.
Oh God, I saw that from.
From I love the Showtime's Infinity.
From Beta Vulture, that's what I'm calling him. Beta Vulture.
That is the dumbest argument I have ever heard.
It's gotten worse.
Oh, I don't even look.
I don't even look either. I just know the last time I did look, it was like.
Yeah, the problem here is that outrage has become normalized. It's the normalized. It's mainstream now.
Here's the thing. It doesn't make sense unless you... Not everybody fits into this perfect, like, bubble. Not everyone likes the same thing. Just because you like something or I hate something doesn't make a person evil. The show is not racist. You have not watched it if you think it's racist.
Agreed.
Yep.
The show pokes at... If you're going to say this show is racist, you have to say South Park. You have to say...
Especially South Park.
Especially.
Yeah, like it's very similar to that vein where it's going to poke at you. And if you don't like being poked at, maybe that's telling you something. Maybe that joke was meant to offend you.
I think it worked best. This was a show, the release schedule hurt it. Kind of like with Masters of the Universe Revelation. Splitting it in half was the biggest mistake they made.
I actually agree.
It didn't give us a chance to see more of the characters.
Just like was said, this was a show that should have benefited from the old-fashioned Netflix release it all in one dump type of thing where you could binge it from beginning to end.
I would have loved that.
I agree, because that's what I did. I binged it all, and I'm like, okay, it's one of those shows that's better when you binge it.
And ever since he binged it, he has laid down his rosary. He is a new man and a man like never before.
Read between.
Oh my
Peace be with you, Robert.
That's too funny.
But yeah, so can we all agree to that? This show, I think, would have done better if it was binged from, you know, like if they had released more of it. If they did, because I can't say they did the first half because the first half everyone would have had. It was from five onwards when things got better.
Yeah, but most people that want to be outraged like that aren't going to give the whole thing a chance anyway.
No, they were gonna be pissy no matter what because being pissy is profitable.
Yeah, again, Revelations proved that.
And look how many people are still upset because Freddy in a comedy was convicted with no evidence and he's not even the killer. And they're still taking that as an attack on white people. It's not.
Especially when you find out that Velma was in the wrong, and yet she couldn't help herself. But she couldn't help herself, even when she's trying to prove him innocent. She can't help herself and put her foot in her mouth.
Yeah, her main freaking character trait here is that she is beyond selfish.
Yep, exactly. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up. Smallest bladder ever is calling. I am so sorry. But thank you guys for joining.
Tune in tomorrow
Robert, what do you have going on in your channel? So you're the only one I can ask.
I would say, well, today, Injustice versus Master of the Universe will premiere in about half an hour. And then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, you and me, Tristan, had gone over the Doom that came to Gotham.
Hell yeah. It was really good, too.
So can we all agree, this is our final word on Velma? I think that we can agree to that, right? This is our final word.
At least until the next season comes out.
Wait. Numbers. Raymond, what do you give it out of 10?
I give it a strong 7 out of 10.
Fair, very fair.
It was amusing. It wasn't anything great, but it was amusing.
Joseph, what's your number?
I give it a 9. The reason I said it's not the most well-written comedy is not because comedy is supposed to follow rules. It's because they had to squeeze in other elements of the show, the mystery, and you had to build the characters some more. So, and also these characters take a little bit more setup. Freddy has the best shows because he doesn't take as much setup, but he's not on screen most of the time. Velma takes more time to set up. When the comedy is there, it's really good.
It is.
But yeah, like I said, you're probably going to see more of Freddy in later seasons because he's going to be a lot easier to write for.
What about you, Robert?
I gave it a 6 out of 10 on its what?
I just think it's funny. Go ahead. I'm listening.
A 6 out of 10.
That's above average.
And for the show on its own. And that's the reason why I went down to 6. Look, if it was on its own without the Scooby stuff, 6 out of 10 still. Maybe a 7 or an 8 because I was entertained despite the Scooby stuff is what I'm saying. But and that's why I still stand by my view. If you took the Scooby-Doo stuff up, this would have been an above average show comedy that very well made fun of the genre of the sleuthing type of Scooby formula stuff. But adding this, in my opinion, adding the Scooby stuff hurt it in my views initially that I had to separate it from it. I wanted to enjoy it.
I think that's fair.
You should not have, but I should not have had to separate the Scooby stuff from it. That's the big problem with it. I shouldn't have had to separate it, but I did.
Fair enough, Robert. I'm dying.
Yep.
I'm dying.
All right, have a good one, boss.
I give it an 8. Okay, bye, guys. Thank you guys so much.
Bye-bye.